one of the great things about playing on a server and playing on Minecraft in general. You can do anything. You can do anything your imagination. If the inspiration strikes you while you're making your way across the the countryside or the hills and the mountains or in the rivers and the oceans or in the ice and the snow, wherever you go in this game, the game will generate some really cool things that you may just be able to come across. And when you do come across them, you could say to yourself, hey, I could put something cool down there. So while you're down here, that's the other fun thing, is there's other things to find and explore. And sure enough, that's what happened to me when I got to the end of this plank and said, wow, look at all that stuff down there. That is deep dark. I recognize it. I knew it right off the bat. It didn't take me long once it started to render in, and that is where all the potential scary things can be happening. And we know what that means. A warden. I don't like wardens at all. I really don't, and they're scary. But we'll discuss the nuts and bolts of the deep dark and the ancient city in just a few moments. While there's this obvious deep dark, the question is there an ancient city? So, I've been exploring this area. It's very well lit up. Gotta imagine when I first came down here to explore, like you do in all Minecraft caves, it's completely dark. There's monsters everywhere. This area was much safer, obviously, because... oh, what do we have here? I'm talking about safety, sir, and you're over there staring at me like you want to... oh, he's coming this way! Oh, no. You're not even going to come anywhere near me, anywhere close. Gosh darn it. I swear. I don't know what you think you were doing, dude, because it's pretty well lit up around here. I don't know where you came from. Oh, you know what? Maybe you... no, that's a pretty far drop. I don't know where you came from. I don't want to know where you came from. I'm over here talking about some deep dark and some what I thought was potential ancient city. And like we've said, we know, spoiler alert, it's definitely an ancient city down here. What I'm going to be showing today is what I've done to the area so far. Much like videos 1 through 3 so far, episodes 1 through 3 so far, I have done a lot of work for as long as the season has been up in Season 6 here on the ShrubSMP, including clearing out a pretty decent amount of this area. Definitely cleared it out of all the danger and lit up the place for the most part. And I've started the restoration project. Now, when we go down, what we're going to see is the progress that I've made so far. And I'll discuss it pretty much as we go. And here it is. In all of its glory. One fully cleared ancient city that has started to be partially restored at this point. I say partially because we'll explain what that means. For the most part, just near the beginning. Has been... blocks have started to been replaced. The floor has been cleared out and built back up into the original deep slate, like this area that I'm landing in right here. So when you first arrive in an ancient city, it's covered in the sculk. The sculk has been spreading in this ancient city and destroying it because of all of the otherworldly sculk catalysts and sculk spreading mechanics that's occurred down here for eons and eons. No one really knows how long the civilization that previously used to live here was before they got taken over by the deep dark spreading of the sculk. And they're all gone. They've been gone for quite some time. And by the time one of us comes down caving just one day, when we start to see some deep dark and we explore a little farther and we find this area, it's rough. It's a rough clearing exercise. And what I will do is give you an idea what it's like to do that from scratch. But again, ShrubSMP Season 6 has been going on for quite some time now. And I've put a lot of work into this area just to this point. And from here, we're going to be able to give a little description about the work that's been done, give an overview of the plans that we have overall, and then maybe start a little bit as a demonstration to show what it's like to help reconstruct specific structures, like the ones over behind me here are the ones that I've done pretty much 100% at this point, and we'll talk about that next. At the beginning of every ancient city, on the way from here to the main center structure, there's this corridor. It looks... I kind of think there's a rib cage pattern occurring. It's really just arches, but when you see it from the top, especially when I'm building the pattern back up. That was the thought that crossed my head, was that these kind of simulates a little bit of a rib cage. And you go through the middle and over this bridge, which is part of the natural structure, and then leads a wood bridge up into the main portal structure. Now, it's not a portal structure when you first come down here, nor is it actually intended to be a portal structure. And I say that because these blocks that surround the frame next to the obsidian I put there, and then lit the portal, which is why it's now a nether portal. But before that, it's just open space. But those blocks are there. They're always there in every ancient city. And they're actually indestructible blocks of that very specific texture that's only found here in this frame, as far as we know at this point in time. They serve no purpose. Widely theorized that they could be a portal to another dimension that yet doesn't exist, or at least that the inhabitants of this city once freely came back and forth to. Or maybe it was just a wild power source that the wardens that would come out of the ground and slaughtered all of the people once worshipped. Lots of theories, but nothing confirmed. All I can say is, as you look up, it's quite a structure. So looking back, again, I'm going to fly back to where we started so you can get a look at the overview. We see pillars on both sides. Now, when first coming into the Deep Dark, those pillars are in pretty rough shape. Most of them, if I remember right, all of them were in some state of disrepair and or broken pieces and blocks missing. Sculk was invading, decent, significant portions of most of them. I have since cleared all of that out and put back the blocks matching the most complete block palette and structure that I could find when I first got down here, and recreated them all. Put lighting on top to help light the area up, which is where we're standing right now. And that was step one. So step one of clearing out my ancient city was really to just remove all the sculk, replace the blocks that were previously matched the pattern of completed structures. So it's funny, I started to learn it after a while. So I started to learn once, one of these was complete with these different layers. The layers are all the same. And I found that pattern repeating. So once I had one, I knew what to do with the rest. Once I cleared off any sculk and to replace any block chunks that were missing, pieces that were hocked. Like, to give you an example, let's just say, for instance, this whole corner was absent. So maybe like just above here where the crosshairs are, there was a bunch of sculk, and then there was this big hunk missing, and then down here in the left corner, this whole hunk was missing. But then what I learned was, let's find the right blocks that belong in the right spots by pattern relative to the one that was maybe complete in that spot. And that's really the whole process. That's the process for restoring this place. All of these structures are replicative, which means when they're generated, they're built by the game in certain patterns following certain rules in the programming, and they'll generate in different pieces or different percentages of completion. Sculk will be randomly placed and spread in different places. So let's describe what's been done to the main hallway so far. With that being one of the completed things in place, I had all the blocks replaced where they were supposed to be, added all the blocks that were missing, cleared out all the sculk, added all the candles on both sides. We still need a lot of light. I mean, let's face it. I just realized as we passed this that I haven't quite got all the candles back in place, so I'm going to have to remember to come back and fill these in. But we'll use one of these empty spaces to show the sea lantern. So going back to episode one of the byproducts, or one of the produced products from the Guardian farm, is the materials to make sea lanterns. So what I did is I built that Guardian farm, partly for the experience. I had never done it before, and partly knowing that I had this project on the horizon and I was going to need a lot of sea lanterns, and probably the same color pattern as all of the ocean blocks, because as you can see, I've already started that color pattern by using this trapdoor, which is technically a nether block, and as is this little design and color that I've put down the middle of the hallway here. I just wanted to do that, one, to help bring out and establish the color palette, and start as a starting spot for starting to expand that, utilizing the nether materials and the sea materials, supplementing all of the grays and dark grays and slates that permeate and are a pretty much main feature of the deep dark building palette. So now we want to talk about completing a structure. Here's a randomly generated structure that is just appearing here because this is one of the footprints that the math around the generation will choose to put that structure. And then again, this structure has been fully completed by me. So this is an example one. And I believe there's one which I'll show in a moment in its current state that hasn't been touched. That's the same generation protocol. So to look at a completed one first, and then I'll show you one that still needs to be done. This guy here is like a 4-pillar tower, complete with ladders that you can walk up to the next floor. I've added these, so this is not part of natural generation. One way to add light and a little bit of organic feel to a very stony and otherwise dead and cold build is to add the glowberry. The vines grow from wherever you attach them, and occasionally a glowberry will grow, which will also give off quite a decent amount of light. But enough about that, let's go up to the top floor, where we will find a different pattern of the glowberry vines and some of these blue lanterns. Now that we're up here on top, though, you can see there's, again, the textures or the block palette is all the same. There's definitely some unique textures that are to this. There's not a lot of slabs that are used throughout the deep dark, but here they're kind of layered in this half gap block effect, which I think does give a really cool way of layering and putting some depth into a build. Now, keep in mind, this is Minecraft generated. One of the things I also like about Minecraft generation, especially when it comes to structures, is you can take just something just as simple as this and use it in further inspiration in your own builds. Maybe it's an open air situation, or you want to get the sense of, we don't need air conditioning in here. You can take some inspiration and use that in a future build of your own. But being a top, this is it. So again, a lot of this was taken over by Sculk. A lot of it was missing. And by replacing and following patterns, you can complete the build just like I have here. So going back to the beginning, as a matter of fact, I'm not going to go all the way back. We're going to stop here on the second floor and look and see if I can find and see an example of one that's still in disrepair and requires some restoration. So wow, lots of blocks missing on this one side right off the bat. The whole, basically half of it on a diagonal is missing. And then we got the upper part here. The truss up on top is definitely taken over by Sculk. So this might be a good chance to show the process and describe it on how to turn this into where we just came from and make it a fully restored series of pillars and decks. So this is a great spot to be able to show what restoring these two procedurally generated structures looks like after I'm done with them. And maybe we'll do that in the form of a time lapse. For now, let's just take a look about what we have ahead of us with the rest of the area and the process by which I do it. I'm going to land here to take an example of the easiest place to start is on the floor, which as I've flown around, I've really made a lot of progress on the floor because honestly, first arriving in an ancient city and even after clearing it, there's Sculk everywhere on the floor, just like there is right here. So here's a whole level of the floor that I haven't even touched yet. Sculk everywhere. Sculk everywhere. And what do I do to clear it? Well, first, I don't have on me the blocks that I want to replace it with. So I'm going to do this in two parts. Normally, I would have plenty of deepslate with me that I could just cover this up as I go. I don't have that, but what I do have, if I go into my ender chest and my red box, so the hose are the tools that are the most effective at breaking the Sculk blocks. Now, you can do it with Silk Touch or you can do it with Fortune. But what I'm going to use is the Bling Hoe. And the Bling Hoe is so thusly named because it has Fortune 3 on it. And for Fortune 3, I use it, 1, because it doesn't collect the block, it breaks it. And 2, when you break it, you get experience. To demonstrate, we just take as much as we can, as much as we think we have blocks to replace with, or as much as we think we have time to deal with. So, very easy process, and you can see how fast this works. This is basically the perfect hoe. So there it is, and I've cleared out this little space. I'm not going to clear out the rest. I'm going to collect my red box of specialness and put it back into my ender chest. And collect my ender chest because I've left one. That's why I carry around two, by the way. Because it's not the first time that I've ever left behind an ender chest, forgotten where it was, and it's just there. Like Season 5's ender chest, there's probably 2 or 3 sitting around somewhere that I totally lost. But that's how things go in a multiplayer server Minecraft world. Going back to where I have some of these blocks stored already, right back here, my little setup station. Oh, these are all cobbled. Close, but not exactly what I'm looking for. Do I have any? I don't. One more chest. Uh-oh. Oh, what are we gonna do now? I'll be back in a second. Wait right here. Now we got what we need. This is regular deepslate. It can be placed in multiple orientations, and as you can see, definitely something is awry right here. So I'm gonna re-dig those blocks. If you put them on their side facing, they look one direction. And as a matter of fact, you can change that texture and make it look a different direction. And this definitely stands out when you cross their path. So even though that could be considered, some people like to vary them, and you know, maybe we'll do that later in the end. I may change all these blocks. I like to, during a restoration, make it exactly as it's supposed to be or as it's intended. That's phase one, and then phase two, I'll go a little farther and maybe put some customized things in there, change with the orientation, change the direction of things, change the way things look. But otherwise, this is the process. I've already cleared out the sculk. I've got the deep slate. It's just a matter of how much deep slate you have. And I've already got through the 64 blocks that I bought with me. So I'm gonna need a lot more. But you get the idea. You clear it out, you fill it back in, and you do that all over the place. So as far as this one's concerned, it just takes a little snap. And just like that, it's filled in. So we've seen a few different aspects of clearing out the ancient city and adding in some of the replacing textures and filling out the floor where it needs to be filled out, where you got just a couple more things to show before we wrap it up for the very brief tour. And again, this is really just showing what the current state progress is. There's been a lot of work, believe it or not, that's gone in behind the scenes up to this point. Why I'm really excited is because this whole area is my playground now. This is what I get to build up. I get to transform. The restoration will be occurring on an ongoing basis. Decoration will start to occur. And we really are going to have a fun time transforming this as something pretty wild. I have some thoughts about what to add to it, where there's going to be different, potentially some movement involved, and maybe we'll bring some living inhabitants down here who may or may not live here. We don't know. The story will develop as we start to build it. That's just really why I like Minecraft so much. The story gets told by you and those who you play with on any one world at any one time, with near infinite possibilities. All it takes is a little imagination. It is very fitting that these two structures are right behind me, completed and fully restored, because just like the ones we saw earlier, I think it's time to restore those. What do you think, huh? And I think that's exactly what we'll be doing next time we're down here in the deep dark and in the restoration of this ancient city. And in the next episode, here's the plan. We're going to be looking at where it all started. Spawn here in Season 6 of ShrubSMP. And then my starter area, my starter island, where I built my house and all my little starter things to get started on this adventure for this season, which then led me to all these wonderful places that I've built so far that we've given the preliminary tours of in the first few episodes of this series. Then, the second half of that, we're excited because we're going to start actual practical building. I know, it's unheard of, but believe me, we're going to start. So we'll see you then.